Welcome. Welcome to Unit 13. I'm glad you're here. This is the fourth part of our grant writing conversation and the last time in our Carson Fox book. So glad you're here. And this lecture video is going to be a little shorter than usual because some of the topics we're covering are kind of closing up the book on writing grants. So, what happens after you submit your grant and you're waiting, or you receive word that you haven't gotten the grant, or you did get the grant? Lots of different scenarios. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But before we do, some reminders for you on assignments that will be due at the end of this unit. So the first draft of the grant proposal is due by 11:59 p.m. on 4/22/25 at the end of Unit 13. So this is important. Again, this is another big chunk of your grade in the class, and I really appreciated the work that you did on the strategic planning assignment. That was wonderful. I've read through all of your proposals, and fantastic. I'm just really enjoying going through it. But similar with the grant proposal, I will read through those once you turn them in, get you feedback, and then you'll be able to do your final version. Take the comments I gave and any ideas you had since you started writing and put it into a final version that you submit at the end of class. Okay. In addition to that, you're going to watch the instructor lecture video, which you're doing now. Watch your group presentation, discussion board posts for Unit 13, reading quiz, and then Group three's presentation for Unit 14 is due. All right. And if you have questions about any of that, please reach out to me. As always, happy to help you navigate it. Okay. Another note for you that this is important as well is because of Easter break and I think Easter Monday as well, the due date for all assignments for Unit 13 is extended. It's pushed back to April 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Right. So April 22nd, Tuesday, April 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Hope you have a wonderful Easter break and that you're able to get some good rest before we head into the final stretch for the end of the semester. All right, without further ado, let's move over to our conversation. I'm going to share my screen with you in just a moment. Here we go. You might hear my dog this morning. He's standing next to me, and he is a lovely black lab collie mix named Finn, and he is just so very, very sweet. If I brought him into a classroom or something, he would go crazy because he loves people so much and just wants to be friends with everyone. So, if you hear him sighing at me while I'm presenting here, it's because he probably wants to go play. All right, here we go. We're going to share this and continue our conversation here about what to do after a proposal. Okay, so imagine with me, if you will, you've done all this work to create a proposal for a grant. You have gone through the gut-wrenching, sleepless nights of crying and figuring it all out, right? Or maybe it was a breeze and this was an easy one to submit. But regardless, you're done, you've hit submit. What do you do now as you're waiting? For me, waiting is always the worst part of any project. I absolutely hate it. Uh, I'd say as you're waiting for a grant proposal, it's a lot like as we talk about this kind of after the proposal phase, to me, I think the easiest thing to compare it to would be like a job, right? You've gone through a job interview and you've done all the hard work of meeting with people and figuring it out and submitting your application, and then you're just waiting. You have no idea if you got it or not. That's a lot like what waiting after a grant proposal is like. It's nerve-wracking. It's not always fun. But there are some things that you can do in the process to become a stronger organization, to create more robust proposals in the future, and to give yourself some better chances of actually getting the grant that you applied for, right? So these are some things we're going to talk about as we go into our conversation today. Site visit. So this makes up a major portion of the readings we were looking at this week. They have a whole chapter dedicated to it. What if in this waiting process you get a call or an email asking for a site visit. The granting organization wants to send over a couple people. Maybe it's the program officer, maybe it's a little higher up, and it's their director of something, or even their chief executive officer. They want to visit your site as they're making their decision about this grant application process. First, that's a good sign, right? It's a good thing when they reach out to you and they say, "Hey, we want to meet." It's kind of like, again, back to the job interview analogy. The organization you applied for reaching out and saying, "Hey, we like your application. We would like to do an interview," right? It means you've made it past the first vetting stage of your materials and your documents. So, this is an affirmation that your materials are in good order, that the things, usually at least, it means that kind of all your ducks were in a row, you didn't make any mistakes that were major that disqualified you. They're interested, right? And it's really important, though, in this process to remember that although it's a good sign, it's not a guarantee, right? Kind of like with a job interview, it's good that you made it past the initial review, but now they're really starting to judge more qualitative things about you and about your program here, right? Do they think you can follow through on what you said on paper, right? Do you match that? Will you be someone who they can trust with their investment, right? So, if you're preparing for a site visit, you've gotten lucky enough, you made that win to get a site visit, you need to start preparing for it as soon as you can, right? Sometimes you might have a couple of weeks to prepare, sometimes it might be a few days. Um, who knows? But regardless, you should create an agenda for the day. It should be fairly detailed and it should represent your organization at its best. You don't need to go out and pretend to be something you're not, like hire a bunch of actors and paint all of your rooms and like don't no. But there should be an effort to showcase your organization at its best and doing what it does best, right? So to prepare for this, you should be scheduling programs, right? So try to schedule the site visit for a day where you have some of your signature programs already happening. If this grant is for a program that's already in existence, make sure that they get to come and see some of the impact, some of the programming that the grant would support, right? How and if possible, help it to be at its best, right? Like the maybe there's just something really beautiful. You've been to the programs, you understand them, and you're like, oh, hey, this moment when we, like, if you're an animal shelter, when we do pet adoptions and we do these public pet adoptions in the park, they're just a really special, meaningful day. We have one coming up in 2.5 weeks. Let's see if we can schedule the site visit for that day. And our visitors can experience that. They can see just that click of the magic of what we're doing, right? That's what you're looking for is to showcase your programming at its best. And sometimes they may want to, and this kind of segues into the next piece, meet with some of the people who participate in or are benefited by the program. And so making sure, even reaching out to those people, ask if they're coming to the program, if they would be willing to meet with some possible funders, and just give their perspective on the program, right? There will be other people that you have to set meetings up with as well. They may request to meet with the director of a program that they're funding. They will probably want to meet with the executive director of the organization or the CEO, however that's structured. And that person should honestly be on hand to welcome them and to make them feel at home, to host them, right? Who is playing the host to this group? That's an important question. They may want to meet the mayor or some other important partners or constituents who may be involved in this grant. Like if your grant involves public services or other nonprofit organizations, they may also need to be a part of this site visit and meeting. So schedule out programs, schedule out people. So what do they want to see? Who do they want to meet while they're there? Be ready to talk about details about your organization and about the grant itself and the proposal, all the projects that are part of the proposal. It's one thing to kind of write all of those, but you should be deeply familiar with them so that if they ask a specific or pointed question about the proposal, you can give an answer to that. Or something about the community you serve. It takes some homework here to make sure that you're ready to go. And I would also not only make sure that you are up to date on all that your organization is doing, but do another once over of this granting organization and the things they funded in the past. Maybe try to understand this is from a rhetoric perspective, some of the language that they use to describe their programs, kind of like you did with your proposal. Just kind of refresh yourself to be able to verbally, which is a little different than writing something, right? To be able to verbally engage with them on the proposal and on the work that you're doing. And you should, finally, this one's kind of funny, but you should demonstrate some enthusiasm. You don't need to be something you're not. If you're a naturally reserved person, don't try to be this bubbly extrovert. But there should be a passion for what you're doing. And again, work really hard to demonstrate the organization and you yourself at your best, right? So I would go into this event rested if you can. Um, be able to have good conversation and stay curious about the people that come in and showcase why you think that this organization is worth investing time in and energy and money um, and so all of that is just something to kind of keep in mind. And when you're introducing them to people and your team itself, kind of having your team come in with that enthusiasm as well is important. It's not a fake it sort of thing, but it is a let's put our best foot forward sort of thing, if that makes sense. Okay, so evaluating. This question here. So this has to do with kind of a post-mortem or a debrief of how the grant process went. Um, you'll find this is really helpful in a lot of the work you do, whether you're doing a grant proposal or hosting a major event. I just got done over the weekend doing a big event for our organization that involved an international speaker who's a really important, influential figure in the Vatican. And we hosted this person for almost a week and did a big conference at the end. And it was a lot of work. And now, looking at this next week after all of that, we're going to be doing a review. We're going to be evaluating how we did and making notes for how to do better in the future. Right. And this is really important for a grant proposal too. With any major project like this, it's good to look at it afterwards to understand what went well. What did we do that really worked, and then what didn't go well, and how can we improve on that and build systems in the future to keep improving on that. Um, when you're looking at the post kind of grant process, the very first thing you need to prepare yourself to deal with is rejection. And that sounds bad, but just it is what it is. The book reminds us that receiving 1 out of 10 grants you apply for is a win, and that makes you a rock star in the grant writing world, right? It is a numbers game in a lot of ways. You're submitting a lot of these, and if you get 1 out of 10, you're doing well. I think I shared this maybe at the beginning of class, but I used to do booking and like managing for the rock band that I was in for years. And I was the lead singer, the guitar player, and I was our manager. And in that role, I did a bunch of cold calling, trying to convince these youth leaders and teachers and anyone I could get on the phone to bring our band in to their camp or to their school or wherever it was. And cold calls are the worst. But they prepared me for grant writing and they prepared me for rejection more than anything, right? I would make, 100 calls, and out of those 100 calls, I'd probably talk to 10 people. And if one person out of those 10 people that I talked to ended up booking us, that was pretty normal. If I got to like three out of the three or higher than that, that was a really, really good day out of 100, right? And so um, that's kind of the sort of numbers we're dealing with here, where 1 out of 10 is amazing. If you're getting those kinds of numbers for acceptance for grants you apply for, that's fantastic. More realistic, maybe, is, you know, 3 to 5 to 7 out of 100, right? Like that's normal. And with those numbers and with that reality, you have to become good at dealing with rejection. And part of that is growing a little bit of a thick skin and understanding, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm not pinning all of my hopes on this one grant. I'm going to keep applying. I'm pinning my hope on the process of continuing to show up, continuing to do the work rather than one particular grant. So, kind of prepare yourself to have some emotional resiliency on that because that can get hard otherwise. But the possibility also is that you may win the grant. And if you do, great. Celebrate a little bit, but the outcome is basically the same. Just get back to work, right? Keep moving forward on this, whether you win or lose a grant. If you do lose a grant, there are some things that you can do to follow up. And you can start this follow up process even before you've heard word of whether you've won or lost the grant. If it's been a week or two and you haven't heard anything, you can politely reach out and say, hey, just wanted to check in on the grant process, understanding that um, the response is going to differ based on the organization, the granting organization. If they're a federal organization, a big family foundation, or a community foundation, or a small granting organization, all of that will affect how they respond to you and how they take that. But be very polite. Don't be demanding. Try to keep your ego and your emotions out of it, but be functional with your questions and really understanding that their time is limited. And yeah, so I think and focus on the relational aspect of that when you reach out. Um, use kind of polite care, right? Like, I try to often let my communications have a sense of gratitude in them, and just understanding for the other person as much as you can over email, right? So keep those in mind as you're following up. You don't want to damage your prospects in the follow up. But when you lose too, there are ways of continuing to stay in touch with those people, right? So the book talks about not inundating granting officers with a bunch of information that's not helpful about your organization, but recognize that, hey, they may be interested in your organization. Just because you didn't get the grant doesn't mean you're not doing good work. It doesn't even mean that they're not interested in what you're doing. It could be that you scored one half of a point lower than the other organization that won this. And continuing to stay in touch with the granting organization, telling them when you have big wins and when really good things are happening, that can be helpful. And it continue to expand how they think about you in the future for future grant opportunities, right? Asking follow-up questions if you lose can be really helpful. They may not always be able to tell you why you didn't get the grant, but sometimes they can. And any information that you get could help you improve the program, right? You want to first make sure that you've done your due diligence and that you didn't make a glaring mistake. But if you reach out and try to get some clarity, they may be able to say, well, we were really looking this time for an organization that has a kind of more focused approach on a particular neighborhood or a particular kind of way of doing things. Or we really want to see a larger percentage in the future of the granting money go directly towards programs rather than staffing support, right? There's 100 things they could tell you. And you can learn from those as you're working with this granting organization. Really mind your manners. Again, whether you win or lose, send out a thank you note. Be engaged in a way that is polite, that is kind, and that continues to build relationship, regardless of what the outcome has been for that particular grant. All right. So we've talked about evaluating. Uh, Now, our last kind of piece here was really interesting for me. This emphasis on building a business. You've probably noticed this entrepreneurial theme running through multiple of our texts, and you're going to hear it over and over again um, in the nonprofit grant making world because, again, grants are changing. Some are drying up. Uh, Folks are going in different directions. There's all kinds of changes happening in the philanthropy and grant making world. And entrepreneurship, although it might be talked about sometimes as like a silver bullet of like, oh, just start a business. It's hard. It's hard work. And I want to give that caution here. I think the book is really helpful in how it approaches entrepreneurship. Um, but I think it does have some kind of rose-tinted glasses a little bit here. Starting a business is hard work. It's just as hard as building a successful nonprofit, and adding that to what you're doing already can be hard. But it could also save your organization, and it could build on things that you're already doing by monetizing them, by helping create sustainable revenue streams. It doesn't have to be starting from scratch. And I think when that can happen, when you can leverage things that resources and things that you're already doing to generate revenue in a way that's consistent with your organization's mission, right? That can be a big win for everybody involved. So when you start looking at the idea of building a business for your nonprofit, keep your mission in mind. That's absolutely foundational. You don't want to be, a animal shelter, and you're going to go out and I don't know, like start doing a big food bank necessarily. I mean, you could. There could be a way that connects, but that's another nonprofit sort of thing. You don't want to necessarily be an animal shelter and start a restaurant. Maybe that's a better example. But again, you could. I mean, like there are these connections where thinking outside the box does help, but you don't want to be putting an enormous amount of money or effort into something that is not in alignment with your organization's mission. That's kind of the bottom line there. Think about assets that can be developed. What kind of things do you already have that you can build on or grow to serve your community and also maybe bring in another income stream? So some ideas that the book floats, and some of these are helpful, some of these are not for other organizations, but you can put people to work. If you have volunteers or people that you're serving, there's an example in the book of high school students that are being supported by an organization, and they start a coffee cart to learn job skills and to be able to bring in some extra money to help support the program. That's a great idea, right? It's not going to bring in a ton of money, but it is going to be helpful, and it's going to help your organization keep doing its mission work, right? Which is great. You can also do that with some of your volunteers, right? Maybe you have volunteers who are willing to do consulting on your behalf, some really skilled volunteers who can do some things like that. There may be other kinds of ways to put volunteers to work. Could be interesting. Sell stuff, right? Whether it's the candy bars that I sold for boy choir when I was in grade school, or the endless Girl Scout cookies that you always pass by when you're coming out of the grocery store in the spring, right? There are ways to sell stuff to raise money. Um, you can also kind of do more sophisticated versions of selling things, right? When especially when you get organizations and businesses to donate products, and you can sell those or auction them off, and that kind of ties into this hosting event idea, hosting major fundraisings. That's less of building a business piece, but there is an entrepreneurial element to taking donations and selling them or auctioning them. Hosting events in this kind of category of building a business is more around creating a service or an experience for people that could generate money. So I think it's the Parks and Rec department or another kind of parks related sort of organization. It might be a nonprofit actually that hosts a annual daddy daughter dance in my hometown, and it's a huge hit, right? You know, you have 200 fathers and their daughters. They go out to this event. They get to do dancing, have a nice meal, and it's just really cute. And there's a small cover charge, right, for the event, and that can bring in some money, right? That can bring in some fundraising for the support you're doing. You can host other events that have a cover charge, concerts or talks and lectures that can all help support programming. Some other things could be using your facilities. So, if your organization has a gym that can be people you can sell memberships to, or a kitchen that you could rent out space to, there's a lot of people who might need a commercial kitchen or access to a commercial kitchen. And how do you utilize what your organization has as an income stream, right? um, what kind of assets. You need to keep in mind depreciation costs and use costs and some of those things as you're doing this. This is important. If your equipment is being used, it's going to have wear and tear. If your facilities are being used, there's going to be costs to that. So this isn't free money. It's running a business. So you need to price your offerings accordingly. But this could be a good opportunity, right? Risks. Some of these programmings and trainings may require professional staff, the time of staff that you already have, and they may already be stretched thin or hiring new people, right? So keeping that in mind. Um, you want to be aware of any major disruptions or changes that could happen if your kitchen is being used all the time to organize it by people or organizations that you're renting it out to. Will it still be able to be used for its original purpose and for the mission work of your organization, right? And you need to have a business plan. If you can write a grant proposal, the authors of this book assure you that you can write a business plan, which, yeah, I would agree with that for the most part. I think it would be helpful to maybe get a quick course on writing the business plan or check out a book. But if you can do the detailed financial work and kind of heavy lifting of a grant proposal, that's a lot of the same skills that go into writing a business plan. And but there are definitely some differences. So kind of brush up on what that looks like. But a business could be a viable form of income for your nonprofit. Yeah. All right, there we go. Oh, we've had this conversation a couple of times, and I just really want to say here at the end of our course texts that I'm thankful for each of you, and thank you for going through this journey together. And yeah, I'm excited to read and look at your final projects. And I appreciate the work that you've put into this class and into these readings. I really think that it will have some good fruit, and I hope that it helps equip you as you look at continuing to do grant writing and managing and leading organizations in the nonprofit sphere. All right. Thank you so much, and talk to you next time.